So, hi everyone. I am very excited to bring you Riz Virk, who's going to be speaking at the October 14th through 16th event in Sedona, contact2022.com. And I am really excited because Riz, this is called hitting the ball out of the park. I've known Riz for a long time, and he is one of the most gifted human beings I have ever met. So, everyone, welcome Riz and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to the event.
Yeah, it was kind of like pulling teeth to get you to come, but that's all right. That's okay. I don't mind pulling teeth. So right behind you, I can see a copy of the simulate. Can you hold up your book?
Oh
Actually,
yeah, this is the second book called The Simulated Multiverse. And then this is the first book, which is called
yes,
The
Jen.
Simulation Hypothesis.
Yes. Now these are well received and critically acclaimed. I think they're in multiple versions in multiple languages on a global scale. And aren't you in the East West bookstore also in California?
Yeah, absolutely. So, East West in California, it's one of the top best-selling books there, right next to Yogananda's books.
I mean, oh my
We
God.
have a Portuguese version that's a bestseller in Brazil. We have a French version, a Japanese version. We were supposed to have a Chinese version, but they censored it because of all the references to Buddhism and reincarnation that exist in the
Ah,
first book. The second book should be okay, but the first book was so maybe there's the old saying you're not really anybody till you've been censored. So
okay. Yeah, I like that. Um, so how would you explain? I mean, it's such a huge topic. And actually, I think what you've got foundationally is I'm just gonna let you talk. How would you describe this? Because this is the basis for even like the Matrix movie and all that. Like you've got it, you've nailed it. So
Yeah, so I think most people are familiar with the idea of living inside a simulation from popular fiction. The most famous of which is the Matrix movies, right, where Neo thinks he's living a real life, and he's going to work in his cubicle, and he explores later on and finds out that what he thought was real was not physically real and was actually a virtual reality, and that he had a wire plugged into the back of his head that was generating this simulation, which they called the Matrix. And it was, one of multiple simulations because they could, unplug it like the old cartridges in the video games, and they put him in like a dojo where he was learning kung fu. So basically, my book is about the idea that we actually do live in a simulated reality, more like a video game. And so it turns out that what uh, this topic is telling us, which has become popular in Silicon Valley recently, because video games have gotten so popular and so pervasive. I mean, in my age group, we started playing video games with arcades and Ataris, but today kids live online through their avatars in video games. And so this is actually it's not a stretch for them. So you don't know how many people have told me, hey, I bought a copy of your book and my teenager grabbed it before I could read it because they wanted to read it. And so this
wow.
happens to me all the time, just because I think it's an easier way into the idea of religion. And turns out it's what all the religions have been telling us all along. Whether it's Buddhism and Hinduism with reincarnation, or Christianity with the Book of Life, or even Islam. And so I'm going to talk more about those specific aspects of how simulation theory and religions are related, or interrelated might be the term that's best used there.
And I want to talk about your background in a second because Riz has an extraordinary background. So this isn't just somebody just, shooting ideas off the top of his head. I mean, um, he's a professor at MIT. Let's start with that. Hello. Although you're in school right now.
Yeah, so I was teaching and running a program at MIT a few years ago at the Media Lab for video game startups. So a lot of my career the past decade has been in building video games and investing in video game companies. And was an undergrad there at MIT many years ago. Went to business school at Stanford. Now I'm back in school. I'm actually getting a PhD at Arizona State University in Tempe, and I'm also teaching classes here. So doing a bit of both studying and teaching
Well,
at
well,
ASU.
well, tell people, okay, so the Zen of Entrepreneurship, the book that you wrote, many years ago, which I hosted you for an event in Mystic, Connecticut many years ago on that book, which was based on dream work and all. How old were you when you did some extraordinary things. I mean, I already know, but how old were you? Tell everyone how old you were when you were in.
Well, I started my first company when I was 23, so I had just graduated from MIT. And around that same time, I started to explore different aspects of consciousness, including meditation and a lot of dream work, lucid dreams, and trying to understand how these things are related. And I came to the conclusion that we have challenges in our lives, and our work and our profession, but that those are an important part of who we are and why we're here. And I used to think, well, if I meditate, I'll have a stronger concentration, I can do my work better. But what I ended up realizing was that, well, it's when you have challenges at work that's actually there to help you with your meditation in a way, because that's the real test of your level of consciousness, is how you deal with those challenges. And then there was a lot about synchronicity,
Yeah.
and following the clues to find the treasure being your mission in life and what you were meant to do. And in fact, in my simulation books, I also talk about synchronicity and clues. In fact, there was a speech by a science fiction writer, Philip K. Dick, back in 1977, where he said, we are living in a computer programmed reality. And the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed, some alteration in our reality occurs, and that we would have the sense of deja vu, of reliving the same events. So in fact, my work with dreams, synchronicity, and following your intuition, which was the subject of Zen entrepreneurship, and my second book, Treasure Hunt, which is Follow Your Inner Clues to True Success, there's actually an interesting overlap with simulation theory and the multiverse idea. And so I'm going to be talking about how all of these things tie together with other unexplained phenomena.
Okay, so let me just ask you this though. Do you perceive reality as a fatalist type of thing? Like things are all, although even like that we have choices, so we can do A or B. So the only fatalist thing is, are we going to do A or B, let's say? Or
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's closer to that, which is this idea of there's a multiverse of possibilities, right? And we have to make choices along the way. And you can go down that path or you can go down that path. And then there's the idea that maybe we're going down both of those paths. We
right,
just don't know it. Like you might still be living in Connecticut in
exactly.
one version of the multiverse, and you're in Vegas in another version. And I might still be in Boston in one at MIT, but here I am at ASU in this particular version.
Right. And so it kind of goes back to, I think it was Einstein who said the most important question any of us can ask is the universe friendly? And that's what it comes down to, right? Was it him that asked that? Have you heard that?
That's a good question. I haven't heard that specific quote. I mean, there's so many Einstein quotes, and you never know which ones
I
are
know. I
real.
mean, are they real? I mean, it's famous, but did he really say that? But it is the most important question. Because in the case of even this premise of the simulated, universe, is it friendly? Does it have our back? Is there any degree of compassion? Is it a heart path, or do we just
Well,
become
well, that's a good question.
linear?
In the way that I view it is that we have chosen to play this video game, and just in the same way that an actor or actress might choose to play a part. And so even though they may suffer when they're in the part, they're putting their heart and soul into that part. And in the same way, we are having these experiences here. We just have forgotten that perhaps we chose to be here. And that's one interpretation of simulation theory that I tend to ascribe to. There are
Yeah.
other people who think we're all AIs. And so that's another aspect of simulation theory. And so there's so many different aspects of simulation theory and overlap with self-help, with spiritual development, with religion, with paths to enlightenment, with the new age, with all kinds of things. UFOs, how does that relate? And so that's something I'll be talking a little bit about.
Yeah, that now. So have you seen UFOs?
I have seen lights in the sky that were acting strange. Now we will, so there were unidentified flying lights, I guess. UFLs is what I would say.
I'm glad you're coming up with your own name. Okay. Have you had contact?
I have not had physical contact in the way that some people claim to, but I've spent a lot of time in exploring other dimensions, particularly in the dream state, and you can make contact with all kinds of entities, in those states, and while doing shamanic journeying, which you and I have done together in the past, with different entities and different stable locations. in the multiverse. And so there's perhaps a different kind of contact.
Yeah, there's
in my
different
opinion.
layers. I don't remember which is which. There's, level 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. I've had all those levels. Actually, I never told you that, I don't think.
Oh, I do remember you telling me one story about meeting some strange entity or person way back when you were younger. But I'll leave that for another.
I'll leave that for another time. But yeah, I've had
Yes.
lifelong contact. So yeah, which is kind of why I'm doing the event in Sedona. But I want to
Yeah, and
have
in fact, I was in Sedona when I saw some of those lights. I went on one of these sky watches in Sedona, over out by Bell Rock, and
Yep.
they had the night vision glasses.
Oh
So we
yeah.
saw
Oh yeah.
some
I've
interesting things moving around that we couldn't
Oh hell yeah.
quite pin down what they were.
My son, who's very cynical, my oldest son, who you met quickly once when you were out here in Vegas, very cynical. And I had him go out on one of those night watches, and I bought the tickets. He didn't want to go, but he didn't want. He's like cheap enough. He's like, well, if she paid for the tickets, I gotta go. So I'm like, just go. You're either gonna see something or not. We're either full of shit or not. Like, just go. And so we get those night goggles. It was a professional tour. There was so much stuff. Like, you take the goggles off, you see almost nothing. You put the
Yeah.
goggles on, and oh my God, he kept saying, what is going on? I'm like, exactly. They'll be giving tours there. Do you know John? Well, you probably don't know John Polk. He'll be doing tours there at night. So whoever wants to, for an extra fee, but usually the speakers he'll let go for free. So
Oh,
if you
great.
go with him, oh yeah, and he'll go out towards Bradford Ranch, who one of the people, like I hear in my face, one of the people, Tom Dongo, that will be speaking. He has a whole thing he's going to be talking about Bradford Ranch. I guess stuff has been kicking off there in the last couple of months at Bradford Ranch.
Oh,
That's a
that's interesting. Is it like
time.
Scott? Is it like Skinwalker Ranch? I haven't been there.
Yeah, it's kind of like the cousin of Skinwalker Ranch. Very intuitive of you there, Riz. Yeah, it is. There's only 2 places on the earth that have that kind of vibe: Skinwalker and the cousin of it, Bradford. I mean, that's not a place that I want to go, but he'll do some of the tours right next to it. Where
Right. Yeah. You probably don't want any entities to follow you home. So
Oh no. And he guarantees it too. He's like, hey, give me the money. And if you don't see anything, you get the money back. He means it. Like, that's a pretty good deal. But and then also we've got a mutual friend in Zenka who will be speaking on Saturday.
Right. Yeah. Zenka's great.
She
Looking
really
forward
is.
to
She's
her.
a high energy person. And
Yeah.
have you been following her lately, what she's been doing? Because she's got all these dream groups and contact.
Yeah. And she has a spoon bending group that I went to a
Yeah.
few months ago in
Oh, you
Sedona.
did? Yeah.
So, in fact, I probably have here one
Let's
of the
go.
spoons that we bent
Okay, there we go.
that I bent during the spoon bending. So
I do spoon bending too. I got a bunch of spoons at home all bent up. And I used to bend even some of my silver, and the kids would be like, stop it, just stop it. It's one of those things. Like, even when I do the spoon bending, I usually let at least 3 spoons for everybody, because once you do it, you just want to keep doing it. Did you have that experience?
yeah, once it happened, you were able to, it was, particularly easy in a group, I found. And
Oh yeah.
for some people, they can do it alone at home, but I'm not like that yet. So I
Well,
tend to
have
do
you
it when I'm in
tried
a
though?
group.
But have you tried?
I've tried once or twice, but
Oh,
not that often. So,
okay.
but what's interesting is when I talked about spoon bending, I was giving a talk at Google about the idea that we live inside a matrix. And of course, I showed the picture from the matrix where the spoon is bending, and the kid says, there is no spoon. And then I showed pictures of one of Zenka's early spoon bending parties that took place there, and they didn't believe it. So most of the engineers at Google didn't believe me. They were all like, oh yeah, right. And then so you'll see comments on my YouTube, like it's one of my most popular talks on YouTube.
Really?
100,000 views at Google, but at the end, people are like, well, he shouldn't have said that stuff about spoon bending at the end, because nobody believes him now.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. You know what that
I
makes
should have
me
I should have
do?
brought one of these, but I didn't
Oh,
have one
hell
because
yeah.
I hadn't attended one yet at that
Yeah,
point.
well, tell those people I will come and do a spoon bending with them, and they'll all be bending spoons. Like, I've had groups here. It's not a belief thing,
Yeah.
And whenever I've done it with groups, there's only one person that could not do it, which is my beloved Robert Biedger. He's the only one. Everybody else has always bent, even the cynical ones. I had the last time I did, there was this like teenage girl, and she's sitting there like this with her arms crossed. I said, why are you here? You don't really want to be here, do you? She goes, no, I don't. My aunt made me do this for a couple hours, and then we got other plans after. So I thought, oh, this is the best, in the sense she is the least likely person. She doesn't want to be here. The whole thing is stupid to her. And guess what? She's bending the spoons. Like, like it's not,
Well,
It's
Well,
not
what
belief
really,
system.
what really convinced me was the first one I went to. There was a 10-year-old girl, and she was bending spoons better than anybody. And
Yeah,
I remember
right.
thinking, "Wow, that's because she perhaps doesn't have the same
Wow.
level of block." And I remember telling the story of the guys at Google where one of the guys who started doing these spoon bending parties, Jack Houck, who was an aerospace engineer back in the 80s, did one at Los Alamos Labs with these physicists and their wives. And he said the wives could all bend the spoons, but the physicists couldn't because they they were with their colleagues, but when they were alone, they could. It was just it shows you
Oh,
the
isn't that
power of these
strange?
belief structures. Yeah.
Well, this is my theory on it, honestly, that you might be fascinated with or interested anyways, is it's in the fifth dimension. That's where we can bend spoons. So like when I do it here with a group or even there, I'll probably bring spoons and do the spoon bending. We enter the fifth dimension where time and space and all that is no longer relevant. So even just and everybody can do it. So imagine, that they have the experience. That's the advantage of bending spoons. It's not that we have like spoons to bend and put on the coffee table. Yeah, it is. It's so that we can have that experience of being in the fifth dimension. What does that feel like? It feels really freaking good. So somebody has to put the morphic field in the fifth dimension, which in my case is me if I'm holding the thing, or even well, Zenka is more focused on the group, I believe, raising
Yeah.
it to a certain vibration, but I'm consciously bringing it to the fifth dimension and holding that space for that amount of time. So all things are possible. So if
Yeah.
we can
Well,
do that, then then
yeah.
then we can change our lives. And so if the fifth dimension doesn't become some abstract, strange thing that is inapproachable. Or what if we're not spiritual enough? We're vegetarians, we eat McDonald's, whatever. We all can have access to that dimension. It's just part of being a human being that we haven't been trained. And
Yeah, that's great. Well, for me, it's a good way to show people that physical reality is not what we think it is, right? We have these ideas of what we think it is, and they are reinforced within our scientific and materialist point of view, and even within the political sphere as well. And so this is a concrete way to show that, well, we don't know everything. In fact, we
right.
may not know very much at
We
all.
know nothing. We don't know almost nothing. And
Right.
science even proves we're using almost none of our brain. So, but you know what? That's probably good because we're already dangerous enough using this much of our brain. If we were using too much of, we're not ready. We're like little children, right? A 2-year-old, you got to watch them so they don't go running into the street because they don't know enough yet. Maybe it's good that we're limited to just little tiny sections of our brain. So, all that said, now let me just say, I've got you speaking on Saturday. That was the day of women's only. It's going to be touted as women's only and Riz. But
And
that's,
risk.
yeah, you
Okay.
can come.
Well, since I'm just an avatar, perhaps I can shift into a different avatar that day or do one of those deep fakes.
Okay.
I've never seen those deep. I did it with Jimmy Church.
Oh,
Jimmy Church on Fade to Black,
oh,
where I
yeah,
was
yeah.
talking on his show, and I did a deep fake switch where took Jimmy Church what he would look like as a woman, and we posted it on Twitter. It's probably still up there.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't see
It
that.
was
Oh,
a little scary, but
oh, okay. I didn't Google that. I can go and Google that and see if I can find it. You've also been on Gaia. I was shocked to see you. All of a sudden they're talking and I'm like, that's Riz. You looked very good on Gaia. Like you're very professional. And
oh, thanks. Yeah, I was out and went out to Colorado with George Nuri as Beyond Belief on
yeah.
Gaia TV, and then I was on William Shatner's Unexplained
Oh, that's
on
the
his
ultimate
show
right there.
as well.
Because you're his fan, right? Aren't you
I
like
am, although I didn't get to meet him. Unfortunately, they filmed us all separately, but it looks like we all are there, but we're really not. Each person is in a separate
um,
location.
well, maybe some other day you'll be able to meet him. Yeah,
Sure. Yep.
we'll put it out there. Put that
Great.
out there as an intention. Okay, so if people want to get more information on you, where do they go?
So they can go to my website, which is zenentrepreneur.com. And from there, there's a link to my podcast, The Simulated Universe. There's links to my articles and, of course, to my books, which they can get on Amazon or in local bookstores, depending on where they are. In Boston and Cambridge, there's a few bookstores that have my books, like Seven Stars and Border Square Books and Dark Star Philosophia
Oh, yeah.
in Rockport.
Yeah.
So yeah, and of course in California we mentioned East West and Portland. Up at Powell's, there's a number of bookstores. I always like to have people support local bookstores, but of course they're all available on Amazon.
Yep. And then are you going to bring books? I meant to ask you that.
I
You table for
I
me?
can bring a few books. Yeah.
Absolutely, I hope so. I'm gonna give you a table and all like I'm hoping.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. I'll bring some books then in
Yeah,
that
and
case.
sign
Yeah.
'em. So, all right. Well, thank
Absolutely.
you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in just a few weeks.